I am Linda van Tilburg for National Security News. The Paris Olympics offers French security officials a daunting task. Added to the normal challenges presented in previous Olympics, it includes an opening ceremony which floats down the Seine. Well, despite the city being turned into a fortress, there's been an attack on the French railway network on the day of the opening. And with me in the studio is Rory Steyn, the co-founder of NSA Global Security Consultants, a company that offers security at major sports events. Hi, Rory. Thanks again for joining us.
Good afternoon, Linda, and to everybody watching or listening.
Sure. So what are the many challenges in protecting the Olympic Games in Paris?
Well, I think where we should start is where you started, which is the opening ceremony. Certainly of the 6 games that I've personally worked at, we've never had an opening ceremony that wasn't in the main Olympic stadium. So this is new. I don't want to say it's the first time, but it's certainly the first time in my experience.
It is the first time.
It is the first time. There you go. So that in and of itself just introduces a whole bunch of additional challenges. I mean, it's difficult enough to protect an Olympic Games because of the sheer size of the footprint of a Games. You've got multiple venues. Yes, it's one host city, and it's not always that everything is in that host city, as is the case in Paris 2024. They're playing football in Brive, in Lille, I think it is, in Marseille, in Lyon. So, and they're surfing in Tahiti, as I've said to you before. Yeah. So, although the vast majority of the venues and the sites for the games are in Paris, it's a very, very big footprint. And now you're introducing an opening ceremony down Paris's main, very famous River Seine. So, precisely because it's never been done before, one can only assume that the French have had to go into a whole lot of testing, trial events, dry runs, whatever you want to call them. And I'm very confident that they have done a very thorough job of the planning, because the success of any campaign or implementation of a security plan lies in its planning, Linda. So, probably 50 to 60% of the success of a well-orchestrated security operation lies in its planning. And if you do that properly, and I'm absolutely convinced the French have done that. That said, the thing that concerns me, and I think it was borne out by this attack on the French rail system, the SVR, is that, and I don't even think that that many of those attacks were perpetrated in Paris. They were perpetrated on rail junctures and lines coming into Paris. But it's just the size of that footprint. How do you effectively cover that? I know that they will, they being the French police or the gendarmerie, will obviously, second the services of the military and every police department, police force, police service along the way and in the surrounding towns. But that just introduces again a need for a very, very high level of coordination and communication, because you're dealing with multiple agencies, and it has to be like that. A security operation of this size is exactly the old rings of the onion. It's put together in layers, and various responsibilities are assigned and ascribed to various agencies, departments, units, and the coordination of that is not easy. So with that all said, it is concerning. But if you look at that attack, Linda, I don't think it was a terrorist one. It wasn't a cyber hack. So it was kind of like old school manual attack, using arson and other kind of, let's say, less sophisticated methods. But I'm also equally sure, that the French will have this sorted out by the weekend. They will learn from it. Of course, you learn from it, and they will pivot. They will see where the gaps are, and they will deploy resources to, to plug those holes. Now, I am leaving for Paris on Sunday. Sunday at lunchtime, I'm heading that way. So I'm saying this as much to inspire myself as confidence in anybody else who's going to the games. But it's not. It certainly isn't entirely unpredictable that something would happen, that there would be an incident. Let's hope this is the last one. I hope it's not a strategy. I know that as a security professional, but I say that more as an Olympic fan, that the authorities have got this under control. You know, you look at the attack a number of years ago on the Stade de France when the president was in attendance. And as you pointed out, you've got a lot of VIPs on those bridges. I'm almost certain that they will lock those bridges down. You won't get in or out of them or onto or off them without, the correct vehicle permits and that sort of thing. And there will be thorough searches. But it's just all new, Linda. And that's, that's the big challenge here. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the VIPs on the bridges. So would that be the same kind of security, or, this is like personal security that you are a specialist of as well, because you were Nelson Mandela's personal bodyguard. So What are the particular challenges for those guys, apart from the city? Is this always ring of steel around?
Yes. So, I can only liken to VIPs on a bridge, in this case, to watch the opening ceremony, kind of like a roundabout, and below them on the water, to a podium on a stadium. If you've got even an opening ceremony, you've normally got those shots of the VIPs in the president's box or the president's suite, at a political, social, or some kind of a cultural rally event where you've got a podium built inside the stadium and you've got your VIPs in there. So again, it's that layered approach, Linda. It's the sweeping of that stadium hours beforehand. Then you lock it down. Then you search anything coming into that precinct. Then you control the vehicles that bring the VIPs in. Make sure that everybody that rolls a vehicle across that bridge has got the correct vehicle permit. Is him or herself trained in law enforcement, and you coordinate that with the local security like you do for anything, like a state visitor, an opening of parliament or a whatever event happens outdoors. And, again, the success is in how thoroughly it has been planned. It has been practiced, and you've got to trust the resources in the layer of the onion adjacent to yours.
So what particular challenges are there in Paris? Because this is like smack bang in a historic city.
Yes. And it would be exactly the same challenges that London and Rio faced. Those are iconic cities as well. And your outdoor venues, and if you just look at the recent attempted assassination on President Trump, you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's exactly that. It's about, and there are so many buildings along that River Seine, but you can bet your bottom dollar that the French have learned a lesson, even from something that happened thousands of kilometers away in a different country. So you've got spotter teams, you've got surveillance teams, electronic and otherwise. You've got your counter sniper teams on all of that high ground. And you've got people watching all the time, both with their physical eyes as well as every single piece of technology that you can bring to bear, as well as searches for people coming close to the banks of the Seine. I mean, I haven't seen any of the planning, so I am really speculating, which I never like to do, but I'm giving you my experience as to how this type of protection operation would be approached, and that's how you would do it.
So can we look also at, you talked about the importance of preparation, about checking all these people that are going to work there. Apparently, the French checked something like 1 million people, and 5,000 were shown away. So, how do you make sure one doesn't slip through? Because there was apparently this chef that had links to Russia that actually did come through that system.
Yeah. So, if you think of an airport, it's much, you will obviously have an entrance into those spectator areas, and there'll be screening set up there. Your problem is that you've got a large crowd, because there's a definitive kickoff at 19:30 tonight on Friday. That opening ceremony will get underway. The fireworks will start and all the wonderful pageantry will begin, and then we'll have, I'm not sure how they're going to do the Parade of Nations where, the athletes walk in. I'm interested to see what that looks like, because I will be watching tonight. But the point is that you've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people arriving at pretty much the same time. So you've got to have a vast number of resources to make sure that people are screened adequately and that the screening personnel and equipment isn't overrun or overburdened. Because what you don't want in any event is frustrated spectators, people that are frustrated by the security operation. So my philosophy has always been that the security operation, while it is costly and manpower intensive, really it needs to add to the experience of that spectator who comes along. I mean, the French that come to the Seine tonight will be there to celebrate, with patriotic and national fervor. And they should be allowed to do that. So the security operation, while we understand the importance of it, absolutely, especially in Paris, it needs to enhance the spectator experience. And the only way you do that, Linda, is by having competent people, well-functioning systems, and the spectator, once going through all of that screening, says to him or herself or the person next to them, hey, you know what, this is great. I actually feel safe. Or at least they think that to themselves. I'm thankful for the French authorities and what they've put in place here. I can now come in relative safety and peace, and I can come and enjoy this event.
So what kind of happens if there was an insider, somebody who has been vetted that actually works now for the Olympic Games? How quickly do you think you'd be able to pick up that something is not quite right?
That's a great question, because you've touched on a very important point. So insider threat, or threat assessment and management as a science, it is a science today, was not a term that I was familiar with back in 30 years ago when I worked with President Mandela. That's a science that has evolved and developed over these past 30 years, certainly in my case. And I make a point of attending 2 annual conferences each year that focus particularly on this. And insider threat is always a major focus, because it is the person that doesn't need to penetrate your systems, that doesn't need to find a way to hack into a system to steal official secrets or conduct corporate espionage, because they already work there and they have access to, whether it's digital information or whether it's physical access to an area. So the only way you pick that up is by diligently rescreening, checking, and having channels, whistleblower channels and other reporting mechanisms where people, if they are suspicious or their gut tells them that something is wrong or somebody is acting in a manner that tells them something is wrong, that they can report that and that it can be investigated. And, there's all kinds, and especially in France, I mean, the labor laws in France are even more strenuous than our own in South Africa. So you've got to have very robust HR policies and mechanisms to check on or to investigate any reports of insider threat. So that's a real concern, Linda. You've touched a nerve there, and without giving away a whole bunch of information that somebody with bad intentions can use, let me just say that I am pretty sure that there is a whole lot of focus being placed on the insider threat, because it's so real.
So one of the new things that came in, with events like these are drones. I think the French took off something like 5 to 6 drones a day in the run-up.
Every day, correct.
Yeah. So
certainly that's what the reporting was saying. The number could be a little bit higher. Who knows? Yeah.
What kind of threat is that for this event?
Well, it's a threat on a number of levels. The most severe threat, of course, would be that if the drone carries some kind of improvised explosive device that you fly over a target's head and you detonate that. But there are also commercial breaches. These sponsors, the likes of Coca-Cola and Visa and all of, I see Airbnb. I'm staying in an Airbnb when I'm there in Paris. I see they are an official sponsor to the event. But all of the sponsors that pay millions of dollars to associate their brand with the 5 Olympic rings, are bound by a very, very strict set of commercial terms. And those must be protected. So you can't have a drone or an aircraft up there flying or promoting or advertising any product that contravenes those that the IOC considers its official commercial partners. So you've got that element to it. And then, of course, you've got, and that applies to the broadcaster. One of the great assets that the International Olympic Committee has is the host broadcast service, the HBS. The Olympic host broadcast service is world class. It's cutting edge. Every single year you see exponential growth of technology and the use of cameras and different angles and types of cameras and that kind of thing. So that too needs to be protected, because they pay a lot of money for those rights, and then they on-sell them to sponsors. So when you and I are watching the screen there and we watch those adverts, that too has got to be protected. And the host broadcast service will use drones, so they'll have to have those drones authorized. But the unauthorized use of drones is a real threat to those events. So all of that means that you've got to have mechanisms because they've stated that they've declared a no-fly zone. So there shouldn't be any drones flying around there, but there always are. So how do you do that? Well, we have now methods of electronically and digitally intercepting those things and forcing them to land. And I think that's going to be an ongoing issue and rollout of a security measure throughout the games.
Rory Steyn, thanks so much for speaking to us.
You are very welcome, Linda. Thank you for having me.